On today's show, the rest of the Eastern Conference is getting better. It's time for the Cavs to do some improving.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. You can find the show wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Please be sure to leave us a 5-star review. Write some nice words in the comments as well. You can also find the show on YouTube at the free Locked On Cavs podcast YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you are subscribed. Hit that notification bell as well, so you are getting the latest Locked On Cavs as soon as possible. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs are over in both basketball and hockey. The sports aren't going on quite as much as they are at their peak, but there's still plenty to be interested in. There's something for everyone this summer, and FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. On today's show, the Eastern Conference is getting much better. I want to talk about where it was a week ago, where it is now. Donovan Mitchell has not signed his contract extension quite yet. I want to talk about if there's any reason to be concerned. And later on today, Kenny Atkinson going to be introduced as head coach of the Cavaliers. Just want to talk through some questions, some interesting things that I'd like to learn about Kenny Atkinson as he meets with the media here in Cleveland for the first time. I'm Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cavaliers at places like Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, some other places along the way. Thrilled to be here with you. I do want to say the month of June was one of the best months that Locked On Cavs has ever had. Thank you for all making that possible. Thank you for subscribing, for sharing, for everything that you guys have done. I very much appreciate it. I hope you guys have enjoyed the content. 1 month down. So many more to go. So again, thank you for helping make Locked On Cavs grow as fast as you have. So very early this morning, and I'm recording this at 7:45 Monday morning. Just as a heads up in case something happens, I'm around for emergency episodes if need be, but I'm recording this at 7:45 Monday morning. So about 3:30 a.m., Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN, I believe, was the first one to break that Paul George had agreed to a 4-year, $212 million contract with the Philadelphia 76ers. So this obviously affects the Cavs a couple of ways. Number one, I don't think the Cavs were ever in the Paul George sweepstakes. I think he would have been a perfect fit, but I don't think George was ever considering coming to Cleveland. So I don't think that this is a thing where, another team in the East got better and the Cavs, weren't involved. I don't think that that's a fair thing to say. I just don't think it is a fair thing to be upset at the Cavs that Paul George went elsewhere. I don't think Paul George was ever coming to Cleveland as perfect of a fit as he would have been. But the way that this affects the Cavs is that the Eastern Conference is much better now than it was a week ago. I don't think Paul George going to the Sixers makes Philly a better team than Boston. I don't. But a week ago, we talked about how, right now it's Boston's number one in the East. And then there's a question mark for number two. Well, then what happens? The New York Knicks, they make a trade for Mikal Bridges. So I personally think, well, now the Knicks have a roster that's built out pretty well. I don't know that they have the prototypical best guy in a championship team on the roster, despite how good Jalen Brunson has been over the last couple of years for the Knicks. But their roster fits together really well. The roster has basically the best complementary pieces that it possibly could have. Josh Hart's part of that. Mikal Bridges is part of that. Dante DiVincenzo is part of that. And then you've got two all-star caliber guys in Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, who we all forget about because he hasn't been healthy. So I have the Knicks ahead of the Cavs then. And then the news that came very early this morning with Paul George, it's hard for me, and I understand health is a giant question mark with that team. But it's hard for me to look at the roster Philly has with Paul George, with Joel Embiid, with Tyrese Maxey, with a decent cast of role players, Kelly Oubre Jr., Eric Gordon's going to Philly. It's hard for me to look at that roster and say, right now, the Cavs are better than them. Doesn't mean the Cavs are bad. I don't think so. I think now, but now, where that question mark was, who's the second best team in the East? And the Cavs were part of that conversation. I think now that question mark is, okay, well, who is the fourth best team in the East? And I think the Cavs are part of that conversation. The Cavs might be at the top of that conversation, but that's a conversation that includes teams like Milwaukee, who has won a title in the last 5 years, the Orlando Magic, who I think the KCP signing, 3 years for $66 million, is a very nice signing for them. I don't think that they're quite there, but as Paolo Banchero continues to improve and get better, the Magic are going to be a problem in the Eastern Conference. They're a team that's on its way up, and I still think the Cavs are on their way up, but the Magic are going to be in a very similar conversation to them. I haven't mentioned the Indiana Pacers, who just went to the Eastern Conference Finals. The East is getting much, much better, and the Cavs need to do something about it. Not because the Cavs aren't good, but I do see on paper, and the games are not played on paper, they're played on hardwood. But on paper, I see teams that are passing the Cavs by in terms of talent level. I still think the Cavs are really, really talented. I don't think that is a question, but I think other teams have done enough adding guys to where New York added Bridges, the Sixers added Paul George, the Magic, who I don't think are better than the Cavs, but added Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and the Cavs have not done anything yet. They're not going to go all summer without doing anything. That's silly. That's a really silly thing to think. But I think what the last 4 or 5 days, really since the Knicks traded for Mikal Bridges, what that period of time has told us about the Cavs is that they need to improve. I don't think just running it back the same way it has been is going to be enough. Maybe even to get to the second round, depending on who the matchup is. I certainly don't think that as of right now, running it back is enough to get to the conference finals. And if in year 3 of Donovan Mitchell with this organization, if the conference finals isn't the goal, I think that the bar is set a little too low for this team. Donovan Mitchell is in his prime. We'll talk about his contract extension coming up in just a little bit on today's show, but he's in his prime. Evan Mobley's only getting better. We don't know what the rest of the roster is going to look like around those guys. It sounds like they want to run back the core four. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but the Cavs need to get better. Whether it's with better role players, I don't know. I think that there are a few guys available that the Cavs should be interested in. And as the week goes on, we can talk about those guys. Or if it's with breaking up the core four and reallocating some of that talent. But I think something needs to be done for the Cavs because right now, as it stands today, and it is July 1st. So as it stands today, doesn't matter nearly as much as what it looks like in October, for good and bad. As it stands right now, I think the Cavs need to improve if they want to reach the Eastern Conference Finals, if they want to reach the NBA Finals, most certainly. They might need to improve if they want to reach the second round again. And yes, I think that there will be some improvement that comes just because of Kenny Atkinson. I think that the Cavs, because of Kenny Atkinson, will be a better team than they were last year because of JB Bickerstaff. But I still don't think that's good enough. I don't think that improvement on the bench, which I do think is a real thing and I do think matters, I don't know that that improvement on the bench is enough right now to keep up with the arms race in the Eastern Conference. I'm willing to give this team the benefit of the doubt for a little bit because it's 8 o'clock in the morning on July 1st. The fact that moves haven't happened yet isn't a reason to panic. I truly don't believe that you should be panicking because other teams have made moves and the Cavs haven't. If we're being honest with ourselves, I think yesterday when free agency opened up at 6 o'clock on Sunday, things moved a little slow. Now, I think part of that is because teams were allowed to negotiate with their own free agents since the finals ended 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago or however long it's been. So I think that's part of the reason why at 6 o'clock there wasn't, that influx of agreed upon contracts at 6:01 that clearly had been agreed upon beforehand, other than Luke Cornett, which I thought that was really funny. He was the first one to have his contract reported. But I think that the Cavs should get the benefit of the doubt a little bit. Now, if in a week we're still in the same situation, I think the conversation is a little bit different. But right now, it's been a little slow with free agency. I think the Cavs will make moves, but I think that the past 12, 15 hours, depending on when you're listening to this, the start of free agency has shown me that they need to make moves. Today's Locked On Cavs is brought to you by FanDuel. I love watching sports, guys. I know you love sports. If you are watching or listening to today's episode of Locked On Cavs, I know you love sports. I know you love the Cavs. You might love the Cleveland Guardians as well. That is absolutely something that you need to keep in mind when you are browsing FanDuel, because I think that there is a lot with the Cleveland Guardians that is very interesting. Guardians didn't have a very good week. They lost, they won 2 of 3 in Baltimore. Very impressive series. Then they lost 3 out of 4 to Kansas City. Guardians still, as I record this right now, have the best record in the American League. I think that's worth something. Despite having the best record in the AL, they've got just the 3rd best odds to win the American League on FanDuel at plus 700. I think that's a really smart play. If you're looking to make some coin on baseball, but you don't want to dive into the daily minutia of the game. You don't want to be betting games, studying pitching matchups every day. FanDuel makes it easy. You can put money on the Guardians to win the AL at plus 700 on FanDuel. Or if you want a little bit of a safer bet, a little bit less of a value play here, Guardians are minus 280 to win the American League Central Division. Minus 280 to win the AL Central. It's not great value, but I love the Guardians' chances to hang on to this division lead throughout the year. And of course, this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. So every day, you can get a boost or a bonus all summer long. Head on over FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So one of the things that I think a lot of people expected to happen by now, and certainly I am a little surprised that it hasn't happened yet, is Donovan Mitchell's contract extension. And we will talk about that coming up in just a second right here on Locked On Cavs. But are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume because you get a headache from all the shouting that's going on some of those shows? Well, I'm here to tell you to make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel that's programmed for you every day to bring you the best stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV Channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So with Donovan Mitchell, there's been a lot of thought that he's going to sign a contract extension with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he has not yet. As I record this, there has not been reporting, and I will check Twitter right now just to double check, and no, there has been nothing yet. There's not been reporting that the Cavs and Mitchell have agreed to a contract extension. There's no reason to worry. I do not believe that Donovan Mitchell is going to do anything this summer other than sign a contract extension with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I feel very confident about that. I'm a little surprised that it has not been agreed upon and reported as such to this point. But I don't think that there's a reason to worry. I understand that there can be trepidation when these things drag out a little longer. There might be some minor details that need to be worked on, but I, right now, do not see a reason for Cavs fans to worry about Donovan Mitchell and his future in Cleveland. I think that if there were reasons to be concerned, you would have heard about it. I really think that if there were real reasons that, maybe there's wavering going on one side or the other, that they're not sure this is the best idea. If that would have been the case, you would have heard about it. It would have been something that would have been reported. And I think that this is really the key here too. You would have started to have heard more rumors pop up about destinations for Donovan Mitchell. Notice how throughout the season, You'll see photoshops on Instagram of Donovan in a Miami Heat jersey or a Lakers jersey or something like that. And that stuff has largely gone away because those rumors have died down, because everything in the NBA, in league circles, has pointed to Donovan Mitchell signing a contract extension in Cleveland and staying with the Cavaliers. I don't believe anything has changed. I don't have reason to believe anything has changed. So I'm telling you right now, don't worry about this. This isn't something that is a big deal. Sometimes teams wait on this stuff. Sometimes there are minor details that need to be worked out. Sometimes, yeah, there is reason to worry. I don't think that this is one of those things. I think that Donovan's going to sign a contract extension with the Cavs. I think he's going to be here for a while. I'm not saying he's going to finish his career in Cleveland. I'm not saying he's going to be a member of the Cavaliers for life. But I think he's going to be here for quite a while. I think he's still going to sign that contract extension. I don't think that there's any reason for concern right now. Now, what the rest of the roster looks like around him, I think, is a very interesting conversation. And I also think, it is worth noting, this past weekend, Donovan had a basketball camp. I believe it was the Spida Elite Camp, and it was out in Los Angeles. Cavs president of basketball operations, Kobe Altman, he was out there. New Cavs head coach Kenny Atkinson, he was out there. There was video of those guys all talking. Everything looks fine. Like, they look like a team that is going to be together for quite a while. And if you really, really, really want to dig into this, Donovan yesterday posted a ton of stories on Instagram, and I don't think that this stuff is ever really worth reading into, but if you really want to read into something, I get it. If you're just digging for any morsel, any nugget of information, well, he's been posting quite a bit on his Instagram story, as one does, and, he posts himself wearing Cavs stuff. To me, a guy that is unhappy with his situation, a guy that is unhappy and doesn't want to sign a contract extension, isn't doing that type of stuff. If you want to read into everything and you want to psych yourself out and freak yourself out that Donovan Mitchell might not sign a contract extension with the Cavs, be my guest. But I think you're wrong. I don't think that's a possibility. I would be very surprised still if he does anything this summer other than sign a contract extension. Now, I don't know how long that extension is going to be. It could be 3 years. It could be 4 years. I don't know if there's going to be a player option. There might be. There might not be. But there's no reason for concern that he's not going to be on the Cavs. Really, I think that there might be some minor details that still need to be worked out. But I really, truly don't think that you should be concerned about whether or not he's going to sign a contract extension. I don't. One guy who has signed a contract with the Cleveland Cavaliers is Kenny Atkinson. He's going to be introduced to the media today at Cleveland Clinic Courts. I've got some questions, some things I'm interested to learn about Kenny Atkinson. We'll talk through that next right here on Locked On Cavs. So Kenny Atkinson is now the 24th head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers. He was named head coach by the Cavs late last week. This was obviously agreed upon a week ago. So for all intents and purposes, he has been the head coach of the Cavaliers for about a week. And he will be introduced to the media early this afternoon. And I have a lot of questions for Kenny Atkinson. Obviously, I'm not going to have the opportunity to ask all of them. I will have the opportunity to ask some of them. But I wanted to talk through 3 or 4 questions that I have that I want to hear Kenny Atkinson answer today. The first question that I'm interested to hear from Atkinson is, why this opening? What was it about the Cleveland Cavaliers job opening that was appealing to you? Because since Kenny and the Brooklyn Nets parted ways a couple of years ago, his name has popped up with a lot of openings. There have been quite a few openings across the NBA in that time. I know it doesn't feel like that long ago, but there are only 5 coaches in the NBA right now that were in place in their current situation prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Think about that. There's been a lot of turnover since Kenny Atkinson lost his job. And Kenny has been, rumored for several jobs. He's interviewed for some jobs. He was even offered the job in Charlotte with the Hornets when they fired James Borrego. So why this one? What about this situation was most appealing to Kenny Atkinson that he has, because, he passed on the job in Charlotte, and I totally understand why, but there have been several jobs that teams have been interested in him. I'm sure he's been interested in them. What's the right fit been? And why is it this? That's question number one that I'm really interested to hear how he answers. Number two, since he was with the Brooklyn Nets, he spent time as an assistant in LA with the Clippers under Tyronn Lue, and then in Golden State with the Warriors as the lead assistant to Steve Kerr. In that time, he spent a lot of time around superstars. You think back to the time with Ty Lue in LA, Kawhi, Paul George, those guys were there. In Golden State, obviously Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, won a title as the lead assistant. What did he learn from that experience? How did that experience as an assistant after being a head coach better him for his second opportunity as a head coach? What did he learn from those situations? What did he learn in Golden State? What did he learn in, I believe it was only a year, but what did he learn in LA with Ty Lue? How has that bettered him as a head coach? Because I don't think he's a flawless head coach by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think anyone does. I think if I asked him, I said, hey, Kenny, do you think you're a flawless head coach? He'd say no. I don't think there's a coach in the NBA that would say they are a flawless head coach. At least, if they did, I believe they'd be talking facetiously. So that's question number two. Question number three, how do you plan on maximizing the too big situation? Because I don't want to ask him a question as if, they're for sure going to split up the bigs until they do. I am going to operate until there's a trade with Jarrett Allen. I mean, let's be honest. If they're trading away one of the two bigs, it's not going to be Evan Mobley. It would be Jarrett Allen. So as long as he's on the roster, the Cavs have a different situation in the front court than most teams. How does Kenny Atkinson plan on maximizing that? I think that is a very interesting thing. I think that is something that I really want to hear from him. I want to ask the same thing about the backcourt. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, I think that they played really, really well together. Donovan's first year in the NBA, or first year in the Cavs, excuse me. And then this past year, it was a nightmare of a season for Darius. How does Kenny Atkinson help Darius Garland get back to what he was before the jaw injury? And how does he get the most out of a backcourt that has two ball-dominant guards, neither of which are, considered to be average or above average size for their position? They're two smaller guards. How does he maximize that on both ends of the floor? Another question I have is, what kind of pace do you want to play with? The Cavs have been a bottom 5 team in pace in the NBA for the last several years. Kenny Atkinson, as a head coach, his teams were either in the top 10 in pace or near the top 10 in pace every year he was in Brooklyn. The one year they weren't in the top 10, they were 11th. So he is, as a coach, had teams that have run up and down. Now, is that a stylistic thing that Kenny Atkinson likes? Or is that because he wants to coach to his personnel? I think that'll be a very telling answer when we get it from Kenny Atkinson. So he will be introduced later on today. Tomorrow's episode will certainly cover more NBA free agency stuff. It will cover how Kenny Atkinson's introductory press conference went. So be sure to stay tuned. Keep it locked right here to Locked on Cavs. Thank you for making Locked on Cavs your first listen every day. As I mentioned earlier in the show, the month of June was awesome for Locked on Cavs. And I cannot thank you guys enough. We had our best month on YouTube ever in the history of the Locked on Cavs channel. The podcast numbers were really, really good as well. So I just want to say to all of you, thank you for helping to make Locked on Cavs such a fast grower of a podcast. It's been awesome to see. I cannot wait to see where we can all take this show, because this is not just me sitting here talking. It's you guys listening. It's interaction. I've loved the first month of doing this show. I cannot wait to keep going. I can't wait to be out in Vegas at Summer League, bringing you guys content from there. I cannot wait to get really creative throughout this summer as we talk about the Cavs during the summer months before basketball gets here. And then, of course, I absolutely cannot wait for the games to start up. I mean, that is the thing I love. That's the thing I know you all love. I cannot wait to talk about the Cavaliers every day, 5 days a week coming at you, and certainly more often than that during the actual basketball season. But thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Sorry this episode's coming out a little bit later today. I just wanted to see if the Cavs were going to do something, if there was going to be more news to talk about, but we might have some of that tomorrow. Of course, this is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great Monday, everybody.